Hi everybody, welcome back to the Ava Technologies YouTube channel. I hope you're doing really well. We've got Will with me again. And
Hello.
today we are diving into a few pieces of conversation and a few topics that we saw. Again, these our YouTube channels, a daily show, well, Monday to Friday. I'm afraid we're going to have the weekend off, guys. And we're really quickly just sharing what we're seeing in the AI space and generally future technology. So it isn't solely AI. If there's something that grabs our attention within the crypto Bitcoin space, or even other technologies, we'll share and talk about it as well, because we love tech, and we'll give you our sort of perspectives. So, Will, let's have a quick look at the headlines that grabbed our attention. The first was
Absolutely.
your public ChatGPT queries are getting indexed by Google and other search engines. And this was on TechCrunch. What's your sort of take on this?
So yeah, I think a lot of people probably saw this headline. This is why we're going to start with it, because I saw this all over LinkedIn. It's made the news, and to be honest with you, it's an interesting one, because essentially what happened was someone, you can actually do special queries on Google where you can enter like a site URL and it will give you only results. Do that. So someone did that for OpenAI's ChatGPT and its share feature specifically, and lo and behold, all these public chats came up, which was quite interesting. I don't think people were expecting it, but it basically allowed people to, you could click on all these chats and see people that have been putting in their sensitive business data, asking queries on marketing strategies, business strategies, pasting in their code. And because they had basically the users that had put this information in had used the share feature, all of this information had ended up being indexed by Google, which is not unexpected. This is I think for me personally, my viewpoint is these people, it only ended up being indexed by search engines if the user specifically went share and then create a link. It created a /share link, as you can see in the article here, /share, and then that's what got pasted to people to look at it. By default, this made it public. So
was it an obvious opt-in? Sometimes these websites are counterintuitive. They say, tick to opt out or tick to opt in, and it's like, what are they trying to trick me here? I've got to double just read it again.
So I don't think so. I think this was I think this is the crux of it. Although it created public share links, I think people found it unexpected that it ended up getting indexed. I mean, it's a very standard practice. I mean, it just happens when you create public pages, especially one as big as ChatGPT's domain is Google and other search engines. You're going to crawl it and index it. I just don't think people were necessarily expecting it.
I mean, it is wild to think that if somebody's sort of typed in their business company information or some sort of private sort of thoughts, it must be a little bit disconcerting.
It's since been remedied by OpenAI and fixed so that it doesn't happen. It is default behavior. My personal opinion is it leans more on the user's responsibility. Time and time again, people are using these LLMs and these chat services and putting information into it. But you just really have to be careful about what you're putting in and what you're choosing to share. I
think this is getting more prevalent, isn't it? And I think this privacy thing that we touched on in the first show, I think it's just going to be a reoccurring theme, and it's something we've talked about, and we're passionate about, obviously being in the mental health space with Ava Mind. I think Sorry, Will.
I think the OpenAI could have disclosed that this was going to happen, but maybe they didn't even realize it. Maybe it was an unintended side effect of the public sharing of these links. So I think they could have been more transparent that this might happen if they even knew, or they should have known if they didn't. And at the same time, people should be careful what they are choosing to share, in terms of the full-on chats. If they're putting their sensitive business data in, then maybe they should think twice as well.
So what should people do then if they're worried about their private conversations that they might be having on OpenAI or ChatGPT, Gemini, even talking about their business plans and strategies? What should people start doing? What's the options?
In lots of ways, it's what do you do? It's on one hand, you've got, if you want to use these services, you're going to have to put your data into them. That's a choice that you can make. Obviously, a lot of the services, especially the American ones like Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, they will promise that they are keeping your data private, whether you trust them or not, or whether they will change those terms in the future, is up to you to decide. But ultimately, it's a double-edged sword. If you want to use these services and have the power of these services, you've got to put your information into them. Again, as we touched on the first episode, I think local first large language models and AI services that run directly on your computer will become more and more prevalent and used.
And they're just not that accessible for the everyday guy and girl at the moment, are they? That's the problem.
No, they're getting better, and they're getting smaller, and they're getting easier to install. However, they're not as good as if you're coming from OpenAI or you're coming from Google Gemini and you're used to the quality there, you're not going to get this. You're going to be a bit disappointed with what you can get running on your local computer. However, for some tasks, as for like conversational based tasks, local models can be good. I mean, it's something we're obviously actively exploring, ourselves.
Are we going to see over the coming months and years, almost like, I don't know if you classify it as necessarily, well, potentially it is a data breach. These data problems where a client's data is suddenly being, discoverable on Google. Whether it's a law firm, whether it's a financial services company, whether it's a bank or institution, are we going to start finding that, Sue and accounts, putting something in and suddenly it's sort of displaying all the client's information. What's
the thing is you'd hope not. The thing is you'd hope not. It's the thing that's happened here with ChatGPT. I wouldn't class it as a data breach. It's not. It's just public behavior. The users that created these links created public links, and it's default behavior to have them be indexed by search engines. I think there needs to be a paradigm shift in helping the general user understand what they are putting into these services and what happens a little bit behind the scenes on the technology. If you're putting your sensitive business data into something like this and then clicking share and it ends up indexed, there's not a lot you can do about that.
And I guess even if you're not necessarily sharing it publicly, it's the fact that you're giving that data to some entity and you don't know what they're going to do with it.
You obviously, things happen, and you'd hope there won't be big information data breaches and things like that. However, I think there is more in this case. What we're talking about is more of an education for the user to understand more about these services that they're using.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? Particularly where people have really personal conversations with the AI, that the more people interact with the AI and start having, I would call it a relationship, but you're going to start using AI in more of a personal way than you ever would have done when you're searching something on Google.
Yeah, 100%.
It's going to evolve, and I think it's still going to be. I think it will take time to evolve, but people start opening up to the AI because it's more conversational based. You can dive into topics and conversations, so you're going to probably more easily open up about all the darker secrets that you've got over and above like a Google search. It's not the same, and I think that's it's like having a private conversation with somebody versus you're going into a library looking up a topic, if that makes sense. It's almost that's like Google was like going into a library looking up for information. AI is like talking to a friend.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is, again, it's not, the onus isn't all, I don't want people to be confused that I think the onus is all on the user. I think there's a big part of it on the user. However, there is undoubtedly a huge sword to carry for these tech companies, because suddenly there are tech companies consuming data from the masses more than we've ever seen before, and more sensitive and private data, and there should be more done to make sure that these companies aren't mishandling that information and that they're doing the right thing with it. It's not something you can always control, which is why I think there's a big onus on the user to be careful. But of course, if we can put in protections to make sure companies are operating with this information properly, then I don't think that's necessarily a bad conversation to have.
No, definitely, and that's the thing is like we are starting to build our own sort of local models to give users 100% privacy, and that's where we think the direction should be focused. Will, I should just say, and I forgot to say to the audience, usually we have a timer of 5 minutes per
Yeah, I know we've been chatting for a while on this one.
Yeah, which is fine actually, because we've only got a couple of topics to talk about. There wasn't loads that came out in the news. So again, we're talking about stuff every day. So, but maybe tomorrow we'll have 5 topics to talk about. So we'll have to maybe keep the timer a bit more strict. So, for any of you who saw the first show, you might be wondering why am I not on the timer? So that's the reason. And as we get better at the show, we'll have more structure, no doubt, and get better at this. So, we're sort of freestyling a little bit today. So let's move on to the next topic, Will.
Right, I'll put it up on the stage.
Our first outage from LLM written code, and that was on sketch.dev.
Absolutely. I think this is interesting. Again, as you said, there was a little bit of a slim pickings, at least for me, in news topics on Friday and over the weekend. But this one did catch my eye. Again, I think it follows on a little bit, again, from how the general user and how we should use AI, and how we need to start educating people more greatly on the usage of it, especially as it goes up in people, especially in code, where again there's certain predictions out there where that within a couple of years 95% of code is going to be written by AI, and I think this is again yet another lesson on being careful with what you're accepting from AIs, what you're putting into AIs. So essentially, this is a company called Sketch, and they had their first set of intermittent outages. This was a couple of weeks ago now. Obviously, it's only just releasing sort of the post-mortem on this. And again, all these outages were purely created through AI written code that had made a subtle, nuanced error, and it started to cause these intermittent outages. So that's really interesting. It's affecting big companies now. Again, our big companies' engineers are writing code with AIs, which I think you should do. We use AI tooling to write code and do more. It's very productive. But again, for me, it's just another highlight and a big lesson to be careful of, not only what you're putting in, but what you're accepting out the other side as well.
And how can you mitigate that? Because obviously if there's lots of huge lines of code, you've got to obviously you need that skill and that knowledge to be able to sort of identify what's right, what's wrong. What's the practical process that an engineer will go through, or somebody who's just starting? What steps should they follow?
One of the things that I think I'm quite big on, and it's something again we are exploring actively to put into tooling when we're building internal software, not necessarily the front end stuff that users see, but the stuff that we use on the back end, is while the LLMs are still prone to make mistakes, is that you give accountability back to the user. So a big thing, and several AI tools within the development world already employ this to a degree, which is to accept edits incrementally. If an AI wants to make a change, it goes, can I make this change? Yes or no. Can I run this command? Yes or no. And it shows you what the change is or the command is. I think this is really important, because it means the user actually has to have a look, and the user has to assess what has been put there. I mean, obviously it's not foolproof. You can still keep clicking enter and skipping past it anyway. Most of the AI tools now even have basically auto accept mode, where you can just let it run anyway. But again, even that auto accept mode, it still is accountable to the user. They chose to put it onto auto accept. There's a lot of tools, and AI softwares that are allowed to just run and make edits and do different things across the board, not just in coding, but in marketing and other areas, where you will just come back and there is the output. And I think that is dangerous, and that's where a lot of mistakes can happen. Whereas this granular acceptance process brings accountability back to engineers or marketers or whoever's operating this AI.
Do you think we'll ever get to the point where there'll be another AI that's doing that human check-in step?
Oh, most certainly. I mean, I think I mean, yeah, you see it all the time already. Even, you're using one AI to write a plan, another AI to scrutinize that plan, and then another AI to implement it. You see that within the development world. I'm sure you see that as a similar sort of thing within marketing, where you're using multiple AIs for different purposes. They might cross over. That is a most certain future that's coming. However, people shouldn't get confused that future is here. Yes, you can run these in parallel, but you really still have to be a project manager.
Yeah.
At least I think so.
No, I agree. The outputs can often go off kilter a little bit, and you need to sort of pull it back sometimes.
The development world, the AIs are amazing. I mean, some of the productivity boost and some of the output is absolutely game changing. And however, so it's not like some people go, oh, it's like a junior developer. I think it's way better than a junior developer. However, it makes mistakes worse than a junior developer. Yeah, so it's like this weird dichotomy where you have this insanely genius, assistant that makes the mistakes that can be so basic. So you really got to be the project manager.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think that's a lesson for anyone who's trying to vibe code, just thinking they can just spin up a product quite easily, as we talked about in the last show with T. I think I saw an article actually over the weekend about there was some law case that's being in America that's being chucked at the founders or something. So yeah, it's not a good position for those guys, but hopefully, it's important to talk about it because the accessibility now for people to spin out products is amazing, but there can be consequences, and I think having a bit of support if you don't know what you're doing is probably a smart move.
Even if you do know what you're doing, it's not like Sketch didn't know what they're doing at all. They are a large company,
and mistakes happen.
They have code review processes, they have testing processes before any code ever hits production. It just happened that this change that the AI made was so small and so nuanced that it was missed even within like code review. However, I guess the point they are making is that this change would only have been made by AI, or would have much been more likely have been made by AI than a human, in this instance. So it was a very nuanced change, one that was very obscure, very easily missed within code review, but and one that you just probably wouldn't notice. It was such a small change. No. But,
and done by a big company who's got good systems and processes in place. So
exactly. So
it can happen to anybody.
Exactly. So it's like there's a lot of people that don't know what they're doing necessarily, but there are also big companies and people that are experts in this field that are overutilizing it, if you would like, or not having appropriate processes in place to test things that are being produced. So no, it is very interesting. It's very interesting.
So moving on a little bit on what we're working on with AvaMind. One of the big features we are rolling out notifications. So Will, do you want to sort of just share a bit about that and what the sort of initial implications are and what the future implications could be?
I think this is part of I'm really excited for this, and I know you are as well. I think this is part of a wider strategy with AvaMind as a whole. Obviously, for those who don't know, and check it out for sure, AvaMind is an AI therapeutic assistant. It's got voice mode, it's got chat, and it's what you'd expect. Apart from it's got post-training to do with AI therapies. Well, sorry, not AI, but it's got post-training to do with therapy practices, so it can deliver CBT and things like that. It's very interesting how it works. However, it's still just a chatbot and then a voice mode, which are both cool things. However, one of the big movements within AI that we really want to be a part of is the idea that you can on-hobble these models. You can give them extra functionality. You can give them extra tools to be able to do more for you. And this notifications that we've released is one part of that. So although the notifications at the moment aren't powered by the AI, it starts to pave these steps where in the future you can talk to Ava and they might say to you, yeah, this is great. Do you want me to check in with you tomorrow? And then you can go, yes, check in with me tomorrow. And then the LLM behind Ava can then schedule that notification and you will get it subsequently the next day. So this is part of a wider roadmap of giving AI extra functionality to be able to do more for you. Optionally, of course, obviously always opted in by the user. But yeah, I think it will make products like Ava really dynamic, really interesting, and powerful.
I think a big difference, and the way most of us sort of use AI is it's one-way traffic, in the sense of the user has to be the instigator. You know, you have to, right, I'm going to open up my laptop or open up my phone, and I'm going to ask a question, and then it's great, and then the two-way conversation starts. And I think what I'm quite excited about is, and again, I guess I come from more of a, you know, from the marketing and the user experience and how we can improve that experience for the users, is, you know, imagining, you know, Ava just knowing that maybe you're having a bad day, or maybe something's, you know, it's identified something in your diary that you got a meeting, and maybe it just checks in on you after your meeting, say, oh, hey, how did that meeting go? Was it okay? Was it tough? You know, do you want to chat about it? You know, or whatever it is. And obviously, like you said, the users will always be in control of, you know, you don't want something to be annoying, but equally, you know, you might want that support, or Ava just, you know, recognizes, I don't know, maybe a spike in your, you know, in your heart rate, because it's all connected to your health data. It's for me, Ava to be, you know, proactive, like a friend would be, is where things start to get exciting. And I think, you know, and where AI will start becoming more valuable, because interesting, Will, I showed my mum Ava for the first time over the weekend, and it was interesting seeing her sort of way and response that she reacted to, not the typing, not you know, the typing to the AI. I think people sort of, that's not an issue, because again, you know, people used to Google searching. It's almost when Ava starts talking to you, I don't know how to react to that. This is weird. There's that weird barrier to entry, if that makes sense, that uncomfortableness. And I think over time people will become more comfortable, particularly when Ava is possibly instigating the conversations, rather than the users thinking, I've got to start something, what am I going to talk about? I don't know, and have that brain freeze. So it's really interesting seeing how, you know, users who, you know, may not need that support right there and then, but obviously we want to help people who do need the support. But it'd be great for Ava to be able to help people, whether they need support or not support, you know, even just as a sort of, you know, just a positivity type thing.
100%. I think we spent 20 minutes talking about why you should be careful with what you're putting in and what you're getting out of AI. However, I do think that the future is around AI becoming more autonomous and more able to do tasks. And I think that's where it will really come into its own as well. It will have some detrimental effects, just as any big frontier movement will. There'll be pros and there'll be cons, but I think overwhelmingly there'll be pros. And as you said, the prospect of having a tool that, you know, is as proactive or can be as proactive as Ava is going to be, I think is game changing for mental health. I'm not sure how the health systems are in other countries or wherever you're watching it, but in the UK, I think these kind of proactive autonomous AIs, if built right and done correctly, can be huge aids to the systems and the people that are within them.
Awesome. Well, shall we wrap it up, mate? And we'll leave audience to get on with their day, and we can get on with our day.
Good. Okay.
Brilliant. Listen, guys, thanks so much for obviously tuning in. We're going to put this on YouTube and then probably podcasts. And once we do this, which we, like I said at the beginning, we're trying to those of you listening on the podcast, you won't know what just happened there, but I'll leave that. Go check it out on the YouTube. All right, guys, listen, really appreciate your support. Give us a like, subscribe to all those amazing things. And yeah, I hope you have a great day. Put any comments in the question, any questions in the comments. I can't even talk properly. And we'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Catch you next time.
Cheers, guys.